Hey there, and welcome to Lazy English. I'm really happy you're here. If you're learning English and you want to improve in a calm, relaxed, and natural way, well, you're in exactly the right place. So, today we are going to look at the very beginning of the Odyssey. And, I completely get that looking at a big block of really old classical text can feel a little intimidating. I mean, there are a ton of ancient names, and the wording can be, pretty formal and stiff. But honestly, don't worry about it at all. That is exactly what I'm here for. We're basically just going to take this in a nice, bite-sized chunk. We'll read a sentence, figure out what they'd actually say if they were just talking to us at a coffee shop today, and pick up some cool vocabulary along the way. All right, ready? Let's just dive right into the first sentence. Tell me, O Muse, of that ingenious hero who traveled far and wide after he had sacked the famous town of Troy. Okay, let's pause right there. So, the speaker is asking the muse, basically a goddess of inspiration, to tell a story. But look at how he describes the main character, that ingenious hero. Ingenious. What a great word, right? Basically, it means super smart, extremely clever, or really creative. How could we paraphrase this? Well, maybe we could say he was a brilliant hero, or even a highly resourceful guy. In real life, you wouldn't usually call a person ingenious today, but you would use it for an idea. You might say, that's an ingenious marketing strategy, or she came up with an ingenious way to fix the leaky pipe. Then it says he traveled far and wide. This is a very common idiom. It just means he traveled everywhere, over a huge area. And why did he travel? After he had sacked the famous town of Troy. To sack a city means to completely destroy it, rob it, and burn it down after winning a war. In the modern working world, if someone gets sacked, it means they were fired from their job. Like, Jim kept falling asleep at his desk, so he finally got sacked. Okay, let's keep going. Many cities did he visit, and many were the nations with whose manners and customs he was acquainted. Let's stop here for a second. With whose manners and customs he was acquainted. That sounds super formal, doesn't it? To be acquainted with something just means to be familiar with it, or to know about it. So, how could we say this naturally? We could say, he got to know their culture, or he became familiar with their traditions. If you start a new job, your boss might say, take a few days to get acquainted with the software. Make sense? All right, let's look at the next part. Moreover, he suffered much by sea while trying to save his own life and bring his men safely home. But do what he might, he could not save his men, for they perished through their own sheer folly. Okay, pause. So, our hero is having a really tough time at sea. He's trying to save his friends, but he couldn't. Why? Because they perished through their own sheer folly. Perish is a fancy, slightly dramatic way to say die. But look at sheer folly. I love this phrase. Folly means foolishness or a really stupid mistake. And sheer just means pure or total. So, synonym stacking time. How else could we say sheer folly? We might say it was total stupidity, or absolute nonsense, or even pure idiocy. If your friend tries to fix his car's engine using duct tape, you could say, "Dude, that is sheer folly. Just take it to a mechanic." Okay, let's finish this paragraph. In eating the cattle of the sun god Hyperion, so the god prevented them from ever reaching home. Tell me too about all these things, O daughter of Jove, from whatsoever source you may know them. Basically, his men ate the wrong cows, made a god angry, and got themselves killed. The narrator is just saying, hey, tell me this whole story, wherever you want to start. All right, moving on to the next paragraph. Let's see what happens next. So now all who escaped death in battle or by shipwreck had got safely home except Ulysses, and he, though he was longing to return to his wife and country, was detained by the goddess Calypso, who had got him into a large cave and wanted to marry him. Okay, let's pick this apart. Everyone else is home, except our guy Ulysses. He is longing to return, to long for something, or to be longing to do something, means you want it so badly. It actually physically hurts how much you want it. You could say, he was dying to go back, or he was desperate to return. You know, when you've been traveling for a month and you just want your own bed, you are longing for home. But he can't go back because he is detained by the goddess Calypso. To be detained means you are held back or delayed from going where you want to go. The police can detain you, sure, but we use this in daily life too. Like, sorry I'm late to dinner, guys. I was detained at the office. It just means work held you back. Okay. Let's read the next bit. But as years went by, there came a time when the gods settled that he should go back to Ithaca. Even then, however, when he was among his own people, his troubles were not yet over. Nevertheless, all the gods had now begun to pity him, except Neptune, who still persecuted him without ceasing, and would not let him get home. All right, pause. So, the gods finally settled that he should go back. To settle something means to finally decide or agree on it. But look at the end here. The sea god Neptune persecuted him without ceasing. To persecute is to treat someone terribly and unfairly over a long period. And without ceasing is a beautiful way to say without stopping. Let's stack some synonyms. You could say Neptune bullied him relentlessly, or tormented him constantly, or tortured him non-stop.
Now Neptune had gone off to the Ethiopians, who are at the world's end and lie in two halves, the one looking west and the other east. Okay, let's pause right there. So we're talking about Neptune, the god of the sea. It says he had gone off to the Ethiopians. To go off to a place just means to leave and travel there, usually for a specific purpose, or maybe just a little getaway. How else could we say that? Well, we could say he headed out to, or he took a trip down to, or even he ran off to. You know, if your friend randomly takes a weekend vacation, you might say, "Oh, Dave? He's not here. He went off to Miami for the weekend." Now, where are they? They are at the world's end. Oh, this is such a cool, dramatic way to describe a location. Obviously, the world is round, so it doesn't actually have an end, right? But back then, this just meant the absolute furthest place they could imagine. How could we paraphrase this? Maybe we could say they live in the middle of nowhere, or at the edge of civilization, or in the most remote place possible. Okay, let's see what Neptune is actually doing way out there. He had gone there to accept a hecatomb of sheep and oxen, and was enjoying himself at his festival. All right, let's stop here for a second. He went there to accept a hecatomb. Now, listen guys, hecatomb is a crazy, super ancient word. You are probably never going to hear this in a modern coffee shop, okay? Literally, it means a sacrifice of 100 cattle. But basically, it just means a massive, giant offering to a god. So, synonym stacking time, we could say he went to accept a massive feast, or a giant barbecue, or a huge banquet. And what was he doing there? He was enjoying himself at his festival. To enjoy yourself is such a standard, natural English phrase. It just means you are having a good time. You're relaxed. You're happy. We might say, he was having a blast, or kicking back, or having the time of his life. If you go to a party and the host asks how you're doing, you could just say, "Oh, I'm really enjoying myself, thanks." But while Neptune is out having a giant barbecue, what are the other gods doing? Let's read the next part. But the other gods met in the house of Olympian Jove, and the sire of gods and men spoke first. Okay, pause. So, the other gods are having a meeting at Jove's house. Jove is basically Jupiter, or Zeus, the big boss. But look at what the narrator calls him, the sire of gods and men. Sire is a really interesting word. Historically, it means a father, or a male parent, or a creator. How else could we say this? We could call him the father of the gods, or the creator, or just the head honcho. Today, we mostly only use the word sire when we're talking about animal breeding, like the father of a racehorse is its sire. But here, it's a super respectful way of saying he is the granddaddy of the entire universe. Okay, let's finish up this last sentence to see what the big boss has on his mind. At that moment, he was thinking of Aegisthus, who had been killed by Agamemnon's son Orestes. So he said to the other gods. All right, it says, at that moment, he was thinking of Aegisthus. To be thinking of something means it's actively on your mind. You're reflecting on it. You're thinking it over. How could we paraphrase this? We could say, he was dwelling on Aegisthus, or reflecting on the situation, or the whole story was just running through his head. You know, have you guys ever been just chilling in your living room, and then, out of nowhere, you suddenly remember some crazy drama that happened to people you know? That is exactly what is happening to Jove right now. He's just sitting there, sipping his immortal wine, thinking about all this crazy human drama, murder, revenge, all of it. And he's about to gossip about it with the other gods. And Jupiter, Jove, is complaining about humans. See now how men lay blame upon us gods for what is after all nothing but their own folly. Let's pause. Lay blame upon. This is a great chunk of English. To lay blame upon someone just means to blame them, to point the finger at them. How could we paraphrase this? We could say, men accuse us gods, or men hold us responsible. In the workplace, you might hear, don't lay the blame on me, I didn't write that report. Oh, hey, look, there's that word folly popping up for the second time. Remember from earlier? It means sheer stupidity or foolishness. Jove is basically sighing and saying, "Ugh, I am so sick of humans blaming us gods for their own dumb mistakes." He continues, "Look at Aegisthus. He must needs make love to Agamemnon's wife unrighteously, and then kill Agamemnon, though he knew it would be the death of him." Let's pause on unrighteously. If someone is righteous, they are morally good and do the right thing. Add the "un" at the beginning, and it means doing something wicked, unjust, or totally out of line. So, Aegisthus stealing this guy's wife was just completely morally wrong. Let's look at the rest of Job's sentence. "For I sent Mercury to warn him not to do either of these things, inasmuch as Orestes would be sure to take his revenge when he grew up and wanted to return home." There are two good phrases here. First, "inasmuch as." This is basically just a very formal, clunky way of saying "because," or "considering the fact that." You wouldn't really use this ordering a coffee, but in a formal email, you might write, "I cannot attend the meeting, inasmuch as I will be out of the office." And then there's the phrase, "take his revenge," which just means to get payback or retaliate. Like, if you eat your roommate's leftover pizza, they will definitely take their revenge by hiding your TV remote. Jove finishes his rant by saying, "Mercury told him this in all good will, but he would not listen, and now he has paid for everything in full." Meaning, the messenger tried to be a total bro and warn him, but Aegisthus ignored it, and, well, karma came around, and he got exactly what he deserved. When you pay for something in full, literally, it means you paid 100% of your bill at a restaurant. But metaphorically, like here, it means he faced the ultimate consequences for his actions. He got exactly what he deserved. Finally, the goddess Minerva speaks up. Then Minerva said, "Father, son of Saturn, king of kings, it served Aegisthus right, and so it would anyone else who does as he did. But Aegisthus is neither here nor there. It is for Ulysses that my heart bleeds, when I think of his sufferings in that lonely, sea-girt island, far away, poor man, from all his friends." So, Minerva is like, "Yeah, Dad, that guy completely deserved it. But whatever, let's change the subject. I feel so incredibly bad for Ulysses, stranded and lonely." My heart bleeds. Have you guys heard this before? It's an idiom that means you feel deep, deep sympathy or sadness for someone. You feel so bad for them that your heart is metaphorically bleeding. We could say, "I have so much compassion for him," or "I feel deeply sorry for him." If your friend loses their dog, you might say, "My heart bleeds for you right now." Let's look at that beautiful phrase, sea-girt island. Girt comes from an old word meaning encircled or surrounded. So, a sea-girt island is just a very poetic way to say an island totally surrounded by the ocean, completely cut off from everything. I also want to remind you of the phrase, "neither here nor there." Minerva says Aegisthus is neither here nor there, which is an awesome, supernatural idiom we still use all the time today. It means something is totally irrelevant or off-topic to the main point. Let's finish up her speech. It is an island covered with forest in the very middle of the sea, and a goddess lives there, daughter of the magician Atlas, who looks after the bottom of the ocean and carries the great columns that keep heaven and earth asunder. She's just setting the scene here. The word asunder means apart or divided. If you tear something asunder, you rip it into pieces. Here,
Atlas is literally carrying the giant columns that keep the sky and the ground apart so they don't crash into each other. Then she says, "This daughter of Atlas has got hold of poor, unhappy Ulysses and keeps trying by every kind of blandishment to make him forget his home, so that he is tired of life and thinks of nothing but how he may once more see the smoke of his own chimneys." Basically, this goddess is trying everything to sweet-talk him into forgetting his home. But Ulysses is so depressed, he literally just wants to see the smoke coming out of his own house's chimney again. Now, blandishment is a super rare, high-level word. It basically means sweet talk, flattery, or compliments used to trick someone into doing what you want. So, how do we say this normally? We could say she was using sweet talk, or she was trying to charm him, or maybe coax him with nice words. But it's not working, because he thinks of nothing but how he may once more see the smoke of his own chimneys. Isn't that beautiful? He doesn't want magic. He doesn't want a goddess. He just wants to see the smoke coming out of his own house. He just wants normal, boring life. Okay, let's finish up the paragraph to see Minerva's final argument to Jupiter. "You, sir, take no heed of this, and yet, when Ulysses was before Troy, did he not propitiate you with many a burnt sacrifice? Why then should you keep on being so angry with him?" Minerva is getting a little spicy here. She tells the boss, Jupiter, "You, sir, take no heed of this." Let's look at that phrase. To take heed means to pay attention or to listen to a warning. So, if you take no heed, you're completely ignoring it. Okay, synonym stacking time. We could say, you turn a blind eye, or brush it off, or simply completely ignore it. You know, imagine there's a big red sign that says, "Wet paint," and you touch it anyway. Well, you took no heed of the warning, right? Okay, and finally, she asks, "Didn't he propitiate you?" Now, propitiate is a fantastic, high-level vocabulary word. To propitiate someone means to do something to please someone who is angry at you so they'll be nice to you again. In other words, to appease them. How could we say this in everyday English? Well, we might say, "He tried to win you over," or "get on your good side," or "butter you up." You know, if you forget your partner's birthday, that's probably not a great situation. You might try to propitiate them by buying them a huge bouquet of flowers and a fancy dinner. So, basically, Minerva is saying, he gave you all these sacrifices to win you over. Why are you still ignoring him? And Jove said, "My child, what are you talking about? How can I forget Ulysses, than whom there is no more capable man on earth, nor more liberal in his offerings to the immortal gods that live in heaven?" Okay, let's pause right there. That second sentence is kind of a mouthful, right? Basically, Jove is asking, how could I possibly forget Ulysses? Then he says, there is no more capable man on earth. Let's look at that word, capable. If someone is capable, it means they are able to do things well. How could we paraphrase this? Well, maybe we could say highly skilled, or competent, or even really good at what he does. You know, in the real world, you might hear a boss say, "Don't worry about Sarah handling the project. She's extremely capable." Okay, then he says Ulysses is liberal in his offerings. Now, in modern politics, the word liberal has a very specific meaning, but here it just means generous. We could say he is freely giving, open-handed, or plentiful. You know, in everyday life, you might hear someone say, "Feel free to be liberal with the hot sauce," meaning, go ahead and use a lot of it. Okay, let's keep reading. Bear in mind, however, that Neptune is still furious with Ulysses for having blinded an eye of Polyphemus, king of the Cyclopes. Let's stop there. Bear in mind. Oh, this is such a great phrase. You will hear native speakers use this all the time. It basically means remember, or keep this in your head, or simply don't forget. For example, you might tell a friend, "We can go to that new restaurant, but bear in mind it's pretty expensive." Have you guys ever used that phrase? It's a great one to add to your toolbox. Also, Jove says Neptune is furious. That's just a stronger way of saying really angry. We could say livid, pissed off, or enraged. Polyphemus is son to Neptune by the nymph Thoosa, daughter to the sea king Phorcys. What exactly is a nymph? Well, basically, in ancient Greek mythology, a nymph is a minor female nature deity or spirit. They were usually connected to one very specific place in nature, maybe a particular tree or a river, or, in Thoosa's case, the ocean. So, how could we say that in everyday English? Well, maybe we could call her a nature spirit, or a water fairy. Therefore, though he will not kill Ulysses outright, he torments him by preventing him from getting home. Let's break that second half down. Though he will not kill Ulysses outright. Outright is a fantastic vocabulary word. In this context, it means directly, instantly, or completely. So, Neptune isn't going to just strike Ulysses dead on the spot. We could say he won't kill him flat out, straight up, or instantaneously. In a modern situation, you might say, "My boss didn't reject my idea outright, but she did ask for some changes." Instead of killing him, Neptune torments him. To torment someone is to make them suffer. You could say he tortures him, harasses him, or simply makes his life miserable. Okay, let's finish Jove's thought. Still, let us lay our heads together and see how we can help him to return. Neptune will then be pacified, for if we are all of a mind, he can hardly stand out against us. Okay, quick pause. Let us lay our heads together. Have you ever heard the phrase, "put our heads together"? It's exactly the same idea. It means to brainstorm, collaborate, or figure something out as a team. If you're stuck on a problem at work, you might tell a coworker, "Hey, let's put our heads together and see if we can solve this." Jove says if they do this, Neptune will be pacified. That means he will be calmed down. We could also say soothed, appeased, or placated. Kind of like a baby's pacifier, right? It calms them down. And finally, Jove says, if we are all of a mind. This is a slightly old-fashioned way of saying we all agree. In modern English, we'd probably say if we're on the same page, if we're in agreement, or if we see eye to eye. Okay, let's look at Minerva's response. And Minerva said, "Father, son of Saturn, king of kings, if then the gods now mean that Ulysses should get home, we should first send Mercury to the Ogygian island to tell Calypso that we have made up our minds and that he is to return." Let's pause there. Look at that phrase, "we have made up our minds." This is a super common idiom. It simply means, we have decided. How else could we say it? Maybe, we've reached a conclusion, we've come to a decision, or we're set on this. For example, I was choosing between the chicken and the fish, but I finally made up my mind. I'll take the fish. Okay, next line. In the meantime, I will go to Ithaca to put heart into Ulysses' son Telemachus. I will embolden him to call the Achaeans in assembly and speak out to the suitors of his mother Penelope, who persist in eating up any number of his sheep and oxen. Wow, lots of good stuff here. First, in the meantime. This just means while that is happening, or simply meanwhile. For example, I'll start cooking dinner. In the meantime, can you set the table? Then Minerva says she wants to put heart into Telemachus. Basically, she wants to give him courage. She wants to inspire him, motivate him, or hype him up. She follows that with the word embolden, and that means exactly the same thing: to give someone the boldness or the guts to do something difficult. I also want to point out the word assembly. Basically, an assembly is just a large gathering of people who have come together for a specific purpose. You know, have you guys ever had a school assembly? That's the exact same word. It's when the whole school stops classes and gathers in the gym or the auditorium for a big announcement. And even in the corporate world, you might hear a boss say, "We need to hold a general assembly on Friday to discuss the new company policies." Okay, now let's look at the second half. He's calling this huge meeting so he can speak out to the suitors of his mother. Now, what's a suitor? A suitor is a man who is actively pursuing a woman because he wants to marry her. In modern terms, well, we'd probably call them admirers, potential husbands, or simply the guys trying to date her. You know, we don't really use the word suitor in serious everyday conversation anymore, unless we're being kind of playful or a little dramatic. But think about reality TV shows like The Bachelorette. All of those guys competing for one woman, those are suitors. Or imagine your friend joins a dating app and suddenly she has a dozen guys messaging her. You might jokingly say, "Wow, look at all your suitors." Then Minerva said, "The suitors of his mother Penelope, who persist in eating up any number of his sheep and oxen." If you persist in doing something, you just keep doing it, even when it's annoying or difficult. You insist on it. You carry on with it. Like, my dog persists in chewing on my shoes, even though I bought him toys. Okay, so if we put everything together and translate it into casual, modern English, Minerva is basically saying, I'm going to give him the guts to call a massive town hall meeting so he can publicly tell off all the guys trying to date his mom because they won't stop eating all his food. Okay, let's hit the end of her speech. I will also conduct him to Sparta and to Pylos to see if he can hear anything about the return of his dear father, for this will make people speak well of him. Just a quick note here on the word conduct. In this situation, it means to guide or lead someone. She's going to escort him or simply take him there. Kind of like a tour guide conducts a tour, right? So saying she bound on her glittering golden sandals, imperishable, with which she can fly like the wind over land or sea. Okay, pausing right there. Let's look at this phrase, bound on. When she bound on her sandals, she basically tied them on, strapped them on, or laced them up. Now, we don't really use the word bound for clothes much anymore, but you might hear a snowboarder say, "Give me a second, I need to strap on my boots." Then it says her sandals are imperishable. If something perishes, it goes bad or dies. You know, like food sitting in your fridge for too long. So, if it's imperishable, it lasts forever. We could paraphrase this by saying the sandals are indestructible, everlasting, or unbreakable. You actually see this word in everyday life, too. At the grocery store, canned beans and rice are often sold as non-perishable goods. Okay, let's look at her weapon. She grasped the redoubtable bronze-shod spear, so stout and sturdy and strong. First, she grasped it. To grasp something means to grab it firmly, clutch it, or hold on to it tightly. You might tell a nervous new driver, grasp the steering wheel firmly. But here's something interesting. We also use grasp mentally. If you finally understand a difficult math problem, you could say, I think I'm finally grasping this concept. Next, we have this epic phrase, the redoubtable spear. That is a heavy-duty vocabulary word, guys. Redoubtable basically means fearsome, formidable, or commanding respect. It's something you definitely do not want to mess with. You might hear a sports commentator say, they're facing a redoubtable opponent in tonight's championship game. And this spear is bronze-shod. That simply means the tip, or the base, is capped or reinforced with bronze. And then we get this really nice alliteration, stout and sturdy and strong. Stout and sturdy just mean solid, thick, or highly durable. You know, if you walk into a furniture store and buy a heavy wooden dining table, you might tap on it and say, wow, this table is incredibly sturdy. Okay, next line. Wherewith she quells the ranks of heroes who have displeased her. All right, let's pick this apart. First, wherewith. This is a super old-fashioned conjunction. It basically just means with which, or using which. Honestly, you'll really only see this in classic literature, or, very dense legal documents today. Basically, she uses the spear to do the next thing, which is to quell the ranks of heroes. To quell means to put a sudden stop to something, usually by force. You suppress it, crush it, or put it down. The ranks simply means the lines of soldiers. So, she is basically crushing entire armies. In modern news, you might hear a reporter say, the police were called in to quell the riot. And you can even use this word for feelings, like, I drank some chamomile tea to quell my anxiety. And she quells the heroes who have displeased her. If you displeased someone, you simply made that person angry or upset. If a restaurant gets your order wrong 3 times, you're probably going to be a very displeased customer. Okay, let's keep moving. And down she darted from the topmost summits of Olympus, whereon forthwith she was in Ithaca, at the gateway of Ulysses' house, disguised as a visitor, Mentes, chief of the Taphians, and she held a bronze spear in her hand. First, down she darted. To dart is an awesome action verb. It means to move incredibly fast and very suddenly. We could say, she zoomed, dashed, or sprinted down. Have you ever been driving and an animal suddenly runs across the road? You'd probably say, whoa, a squirrel just darted out in front of my car. Next, it says, whereon forthwith she was in Ithaca. Forthwith is another one of those fancy, old-school words. It means immediately, instantly, or right away. Again, you'll mostly hear it from lawyers today, like, you must pay this parking ticket forthwith. In everyday English, we'd probably just say, boom, she was instantly in Ithaca. Then she arrives disguised as a visitor. If you're disguised, you're undercover, in costume, or hiding your true identity. Think about Superman. Clark Kent is Superman, disguised as a reporter. Okay, let's see what she finds. There she found the lordly suitors seated on hides of the oxen which they had killed and eaten, and playing draughts in front of the house. Who are these guys? They're suitors. Here is the word suitor again. A suitor is a man who is actively trying to romance and marry a specific woman. Today, you might call them admirers, romantic prospects, or just the guys trying to date her. Then it says they're sitting on hides. A hide is simply the skin of a large animal. So they're basically sitting on leather rugs. And they're playing draughts. Depending on where you're from, you might spell it drafts, but the classic British spelling is draughts. Does anyone know what game this actually is? It's literally just checkers. So these guys are just chilling on the porch, eating barbecue, and playing checkers while trying to marry this guy's wife. Okay, let's hit that final sentence. Men servants and pages were bustling about to wait upon them, some mixing wine with water in the mixing bowls, some cleaning down the tables with wet sponges and laying them out again, and some cutting up great quantities of meat. First, pages. Pages were young male servants. And what were they doing? They were bustling about. Oh, I love this phrase. If you're bustling, you're moving around busily, hustling, or working with lots of energy. Think about a really crowded airport during the holidays. Everyone is bustling about, trying to get to their gates. And they're doing all of this to wait upon the suitors. We actually still use this phrase today. To wait upon someone, or simply wait on someone, means to serve them or take care of their needs. And that's exactly where the job titles waiter and waitress come from. Telemachus saw her long before anyone else did. He was sitting moodily among the suitors, thinking about his brave father, and how he would send them flying out of the house if he were to come to his own again and be honored as in days gone by. All right, let's pause and unpack this. It says he was sitting moodily. If you're doing something moodily, you're doing it in a bad mood, right? Maybe you're sulking, pouting, or brooding. You know, if a teenager is forced to go to a family dinner that they really don't want to be at, they might just sit moodily in the corner, staring at their phone. Then he's dreaming about how his dad would send them flying out of the house. Now, to send someone flying doesn't mean they literally grow wings. It simply means to kick them out forcefully, toss them out, or eject them. Think about a bouncer at a nightclub. If someone is causing trouble, the bouncer is going to send them flying right out the front door. Then it says, come to his own again. This is an older expression. Basically, it means to regain his rightful place, take back his power, or return to where he belongs. Okay, let's read the next line. Thus, brooding as he sat among them, he caught sight of Minerva and went straight to the gate, for he was vexed that a stranger should be kept waiting for admittance. Let's stop there. Look at that word, brooding. This is basically the same idea as sitting moodily. If you're brooding, you're overthinking something, usually something negative. You're stewing in your anger, or moping around. Batman is probably the most famous fictional character for brooding, on top of gargoyles, right? But then he snaps out of it because he is vexed. Oh, what a great word. To be vexed means to be annoyed, frustrated, or deeply irritated. You might say, I'm really vexed by this complicated math homework. And why is he vexed? Because a stranger is waiting for admittance. Admittance simply means Entry, permission to enter, or access. Have you ever seen a sign on a private door that says, "No admittance"? It just means, do not enter. Okay, next sentence. He took her right hand in his own and bade her give him her spear. Quick pause here. He bade her. Bade is the past tense of bid. It simply means he asked her, instructed her, or invited her to hand over the weapon. You might have heard the expression, I bid you farewell. That's the same verb. Okay, moving right along. Welcome, said he, to our house, and when you have partaken of food, you shall tell us what you have come for. Let's pick this apart. Partaken of food. To partake means to participate in something, or to consume something. So, partaking of food simply means he wants her to eat a meal, have a bite, or dine with them. You'll actually hear native speakers use this at parties sometimes. A host might smile and say, "Please, everyone, partake in the appetizers." Okay, let's see what happens next. He led the way as he spoke, and Minerva followed him. When they were within, he took her spear and set it in the spear stand against a strong bearing post, along with the many other spears of his unhappy father, and he conducted her to a richly decorated seat, under which he threw a cloth of damask. Okay, let's break this down. They step inside, and he leans her spear against a bearing post. A bearing post is a structural term. It's basically a support column, a pillar, or a load-bearing beam that helps hold up the roof of the house. Then he conducted her to a seat. We've actually seen this word before. It means to guide, lead, or escort someone. And then he throws down a cloth of damask. Now, damask is just a very specific, high-quality woven fabric with a beautiful shiny pattern on it. So basically, he's giving her a really fancy, luxurious cushion to sit on. Okay, next line. There was a footstool also for her feet, and he set another seat near her for himself, away from the suitors, that she might not be annoyed while eating by their noise and insolence, and that he might ask her more freely about his father. He wants to keep her away from the suitors' insolence. Oh, this is an awesome vocabulary word. Insolence means rude behavior, disrespect, or arrogance. If an employee yelled at their boss, they might even get fired for insolence. We could also call it cheekiness or impudence. Telemachus knows these guys are loud, rude, and disrespectful. He just wants a quiet place where they can talk. A maidservant then brought them water in a beautiful golden ewer and poured it into a silver basin for them to wash their hands, and she drew a clean table beside them. All right, two great object words here. First, ewer. It's pronounced ewer. A ewer is simply a large pitcher, a jug, or a carafe that's used for holding water. And then we have basin. A basin is just a bowl, a wash tub, or a sink. So the maid brings this fancy pitcher, pours water into a silver bowl, and they wash their hands before dinner. An upper servant brought them bread and offered them many good things of what there was in the house. The carver fetched them plates of all manner of meats and set cups of gold by their side, and a manservant brought them wine and poured it out for them. Look at the phrase, all manner of meats. This is a classic native speaker expression.
All manner of simply means every kind of, a wide variety of, or all sorts of. If a store sells lots of different products, you might say, they sell all manner of electronics in that shop. Okay, let's see what the bad guys are up to. Then the suitors came in and took their places on the benches and seats. Very straightforward, isn't it? The rude guys sit down to eat. Forthwith, men servants poured water over their hands. Maids went round with the bread baskets. Pages filled the mixing bowls with wine and water, and they laid their hands upon the good things that were before them. There's that word forthwith again. It simply means instantly, immediately, or right away. Then look at the end of the sentence. They laid their hands upon the good things. Now, that's just a poetic way of saying they started eating, dug in, or grabbed the food. You know, if someone puts a fresh pizza in front of a group of hungry teenagers, they're going to lay their hands upon it instantly, right? Okay, let's keep going. As soon as they had had enough to eat and drink, they wanted music and dancing, which are the crowning embellishments of a banquet. So a servant brought a lyre to Phemius, whom they compelled perforce to sing to them. Wow, lots of good stuff here. First, the crowning embellishments. An embellishment is a decoration. So, the crowning embellishment is the ultimate finishing touch, the cherry on top, or simply the best part. Then they bring a lyre to Phemius. A lyre is a small stringed instrument, basically a little harp. And then it says they compelled perforce Phemius to sing. Now, to compel someone means to force them, make them do something, or leave them no choice. So, poor Phemius, the musician, is basically being bullied into performing for these guys. Okay, let's keep reading. As soon as he touched his lyre and began to sing, Telemachus spoke low to Minerva, with his head close to hers, that no man might hear. He spoke low. That simply means he whispered, muttered, or spoke quietly under his breath, so the loud guys wouldn't overhear. Okay, let's see what he whispers. I hope, sir, said he, that you will not be offended with what I am going to say. To be offended means to be insulted, upset, or hurt by someone's words. So he's basically saying, please, don't take this the wrong way. Okay, now comes a pretty heavy sentence. Singing comes cheap to those who do not pay for it, and all this is done at the cost of one whose bones lie rotting in some wilderness or grinding to powder in the surf. Wow, this one is pretty intense. Let's break it down. Singing comes cheap. That means it's easy to enjoy or easy to take for granted when it's free. These suitors are eating free food, enjoying free music, and they're paying absolutely nothing. Then Telemachus says it's all happening at the cost of Ulysses, and he imagines his father's bones grinding to powder in the surf. Now, the surf is the ocean waves crashing onto the beach. So, Telemachus is worried his father drowned, and his bones are being crushed into sand, pulverized, or ground down by the ocean. Okay, let's read his next thought. If these men were to see my father come back to Ithaca, they would pray for longer legs rather than a longer purse, for money would not serve them. But he, alas, has fallen on an ill fate. And even when people do sometimes say that he is coming,
We no longer heed them. We shall never see him again.
He says, pray for longer legs rather than a longer purse. I love this image. A purse back then was where you carried your money. So he's saying, if my dad comes home, these guys won't care about getting richer. They won't want a bigger purse. They'll just want longer legs so they can run away as fast as possible, because they're going to be terrified. Then he says, he has fallen on an ill fate. That's just an old-fashioned way of saying he had bad luck, met the tragic end, or suffered a terrible disaster. And finally, he says, we no longer heed them. To heed something means to listen to it, pay attention to it, or take it seriously. For example, if there's a warning sign on the road, you're expected to heed the warning. So, Telemachus is basically saying, I don't listen to those rumors anymore. I've given up hope. Okay, let's finish this paragraph. Telemachus changes the subject. And now, sir, tell me, and tell me true, who you are, and where you come from. Tell me of your town and parents, what manner of ship you came in, how your crew brought you to Ithaca, and of what nation they declared themselves to be, for you cannot have come by land. Look at the phrase, what manner of ship. We've actually seen this pattern before, with all manner of meats. Here, he's simply asking, what kind of ship, what type of ship, or what sort of vessel? And since Ithaca is an island, he already knows the stranger couldn't have arrived by land. Okay, last two lines. Tell me also truly, for I want to know, are you a stranger to this house, or have you been here in my father's time? He's really just asking, have we met before? In the old days, we had many visitors, for my father went about much himself. His father went about much himself. This is simply an older way of saying his dad traveled a lot, got around, or explored the world. You know, if you have a friend who's always taking trips, always hopping on a plane, always visiting somewhere new, you could definitely say, yeah, they really get about. All right, and that is the end of the text for today. You guys absolutely crushed it. Seriously, we broke down every single sentence of a pretty massive chunk of this classic piece of literature. And you know, that's not easy. So give yourselves a little credit. If you enjoyed diving into this classic epic, and you want to keep improving your English vocabulary and your reading comprehension, I'd really appreciate your support. Let's see, can we get this video to 1,000 likes? As soon as we hit 1,000 likes, I'll immediately release part 2 of Learning English with the Odyssey. So, if you're excited to continue, don't forget to leave a like and let me know down in the comments what your favorite new word was. Thank you so much for watching. Keep practicing, keep reading, keep picking apart those sentences, and little by little, your English is going to get stronger every single day. All right, take care, and I'll see you in the next lesson.